Hey fellow backyard boyers, Nick here. Today I wanted to show you the first item in my personal challenge to myself. This is to help raise money for the National Kidney Foundation. If you didn't see my Ice Bucket Challenge video, I'll link it below. I basically gave myself a challenge to do three video series where I show how to make something, and then I would take that item and then auction it off through eBay's Giving Works program so that 100% of the proceeds would go to the National Kidney Foundation of Hawaii. So this is the bow and arrow set that I made for this. The bow I named Ponamu because of its green color, very reminiscent of the greenstone or nephrite jade from New Zealand. It's a nice little bow. Pulls 30 pounds at 26 inches, about 37 pounds at 28 inches, though it's primarily designed for a 26-inch draw. It also comes with 6 26-inch carbon arrows, and so this bow is available now. If you guys check the link in the description below, you can see if it's still available, and just go ahead and check it out. Place a bid if you want. If you would like to get this bow, it'd be really neat to see how much we can work together to raise for the National Kidney Foundation. So just check that out and just keep watching, and I'll show you guys how I built these. So here we go. The first part of this set is going to be the bow itself. You're going to want to start off with a 3/4 inch Schedule 40 PVC pipe cut to 50 inches long. Once you have that, you're going to want to mark the center and then 2.5 inches out from center on either side, and then 1.5 inches out from there, and that will be your handle section. And you're also going to want to measure 8 inches from both ends, and those are going to become our siyas. Now you could use any type of pipe you want for this. I'm using the furniture grade PVC because it has built-in UV resistance. It's a little bit tougher from what I've found. It's a little bit tougher. It can take a little bit more. It's also less finicky in lower temperatures. So overall, it's more forgiving. Only downside is it's got a little bit less performance. But in a bow this size, that performance difference isn't going to be very important. It's fairly minor. So here we are. I'm going to go ahead and flatten both limbs, and I'll show you what that looks like. And we're going to be flattening from this 2.5 inch mark. I'm also going to be using a spacer which is a little over about 0.6 inches. Basically, I want my spacer blocks tall enough so that I can slide a 1/2 inch Schedule 40 pipe in here and it clears. It's basically the same height as a 1/2 inch pipe. Here's the pipe flattened. As you can see, it's got a nice taper to it. Now it's all ready to go. So at this point, the tiller is fairly even. So what I'm going to work on first are the siyas. Basically what we're going to do is we're just going to heat this up until it puffs out, and then we're going to throw it into the flattening jig again. Set the end of the flattening jig, the starting end, right on this line, and press this down. And then this is going to be completely flat. What that is going to do is give us a siya that is thin, but also has sufficient strength and stability. Then we're going to heat it up, puff it back out right at the base so we can make a nice smooth transition to complete the siyas on this bow. So here we go. Once you take this out of your flattening jig, you'll see the siya is perpendicular to the limb. But now you have this really hard crease right here, and it just doesn't look very nice. So what we're going to do is heat up this section right here until it puffs out. Then we can shape it down. So I'm going to heat it up and I'll show you how to shape it. Okay, now it's nice and pliable. So you can see how much it's puffed out. You want to take a towel or something, or your bare hands, or maybe not your bare hands, but you want to take something like this and you want to squeeze it because you don't want to lose the base shape. So using this as a guide, just kind of go by feel and blend these two together. So for a while, depending on the ambient temperature, it's going to set up at different times. Right now it's pretty hot outside, so it's going to take a while for this to set. If it were colder, this would probably be set by now. You just want to kind of squeeze it and squish it until it starts to set. Once it starts to set, then you can go ahead and do the shapes you want. What I'm going to do for this particular one is I want the back here to line straight up with the limb. Now it's starting to set up. So now that it's setting up, I just want to sight down it and make sure that the tip lines up with the limb. It's not important now for the tip to line up through to the other tip because we haven't done the handle yet. Just make sure you can sight down the limb and it's straight. You also want it to be exactly perpendicular with the limb. And here you can see we've got a nice transition and it rides along the back, and then the belly is what flares out. That's going to give it a nice look when we curve this forward. So just continue to sight down, make sure that everything lines up right. Have to twist a little bit. Okay, good. So once you do that, you want to go ahead and mark the shape of your Sia here. Like most of the Sias, you can kind of go nuts. Just figure out what shape you want. Now, I would suggest that you don't go any thinner than half of this right here. Now up here it can be rather thin. Anything beyond where your actual string groove is going to go, you can do whatever you want. So this can be a little thinner right up in here, but you want the area right below where the string's going to rest to be fairly thick. So about half the thickness of the pipe. So I'm going to go ahead, cut this out with the saw. Then I'm going to do that to this side as well. We'll move on to the next step. I went ahead and sawed out the shape here, and I also went and smoothed this down with some sandpaper. So you can see it's nice and smooth. Now the next thing I do is I actually take a half round file and just kind of clear out the inside. Take away that sharp inner edge. That way when we heat this up and bring everything together, there's a nice platform for both edges to meet so one doesn't slip into the other. As if that ever happens, it could cause this to buckle. Of course, on 3/4 inch and 1/2 inch pipe, that's usually not an issue. That usually happens on larger pipe where there's more room to overlap. And even then, it's pretty rare. So, what I've also done is taken my half round file and cut a groove, a fairly deep groove in here, so that when we heat this up, this will also get squished together. This will help make the seam a little less noticeable because I'm not going to be patching this over. I'm just going to leave it as is. It's plenty strong enough as it is. So I'm going to go ahead and heat it up. So when you do this, you want to concentrate on the sides and right down the middle. You don't really want to get this back area too much. It will heat up. And once it gets softened, then we'll be squeezing this together and doing our recurve at the same time. So here we go. Alright, so you can see it's come together. Now you just want to squeeze this bottom and kind of push it in to really bring that seam together. You can see right down there, if I push in on it, it closes up. Now we want to get our recurve, and this is just a slight recurve. We're just making a light static recurve here at the end, so it doesn't have to be too extreme. If you look in line with the bow, you want to have about 3 to 4 inches of recurve. Okay, so now that you've got that, that's about 3, there we go, about 4 inches of recurve. Just want to make sure it's straight and lines up with the rest of the bow. At this point, you just want to line it up with the limb, because it doesn't really have to match the rest of the bow because we haven't done the handle yet. Okay. Now I'm going to go ahead, repeat this on the other side. Another thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my file and now round this off so that there's a nice transition here. So, here we go. We've gone ahead and finished these up. Done it to both sides. I also cut my nock 1 inch from the end. You don't want to go too deep. This nock goes just a little more than 1/8 of an inch. You don't really want to cut through that wall because there's a lot of strength there. So you just cut your nock down deep enough and then sort of wrap it around the sides a little bit. But you don't want to cut too much into this. Your string loop is just going to sit in this and then track down the CF. So that's not going to be an issue. So now we're going to be working on our handle. What we're going to do is we're going to heat up the handle section. We're going to heat up mainly between these marks and just a little overlap into these other marks. That way we can really blend the bow nicely into the handle. So here we go. Alright, so now the handle is really pliable. What I'm going to do is take this hot pad and just squish the handle. I'm going to do it on this table here. You might not be able to see. But I'm just going to flatten it out. So when you do this, you want the resulting handle to be just a little bit thinner than 0.6 inches. You want it to be about 1/2 inch thick. That way you'll still have good stability, but the handle will be very forgiving and it won't collapse. So I like to give my handles just a tiny bit of reflex, not a lot, but just a little bit. Alright. Now that that's set, you just want to sight down both limbs. Make sure that from one tip to the other, the bow lines up. You may have to do some minor twisting and some flexing at this point. Alright, there we go. It's nice and aligned. Here's the finished handle.